Comic Collectors Guild members, welcome to Come Together, the show that spotlights guild membership. And today we have a special treat. It's my first double interview. So please welcome to the show Kyle Casello and Nora Bengal, not like the tiger as I've been told, from Eagan, Minnesota. Welcome to the show, guys. How are you?
Good, thank yourself?
Excellent. Thank you so much for taking the time and agreeing to do an interview with me today. You are my first double interview, my first couple, I guess you'd say. So I'm excited to talk to both of you and find out a little bit more about how things are in Minnesota. First off, let's do the standard, how's life going there in the middle of this pandemic?
Well, currently we're under a stay-at-home until May 18th. Not doing much besides, working from home and reading comics. I just got done with school, doing my capstone project. So officially 2 days ago, I'm done with college. But
congratulations.
After 10 years.
After 10 years, yeah.
Congratulations to you. That's a big accomplishment.
Thank you.
Myself, and it was a big moment where you just like, oh, thank God. Now I get to pay my student loan debt off.
Right.
Well, luckily enough, it's the pandemic. They pushed back the payments. So
that is very, very fortunate. Yes, that's true. And how about you, Nora? Tell me about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, like Kyle said, we're both fortunate to be working at home. We both work in education at universities. So I work at a university, but also in the performing arts. So we don't have any events going on, but I'm still able to work in a different department on campus. So yeah, just staying busy, working, reading, watching, catching up on movies and shows.
It's a hard life for us collectors now, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Can't go out and hunt for stuff, but
well, luckily enough, our local comic shop has appointments, so you can schedule appointments and go in, browse. So haven't done it yet, but we're seriously contemplating it.
Well. That is a very interesting idea. I wish mine did that. So you just finished school, Kyle. What was your area of study?
Sociology, law, crime, and deviance. My capstone was actually about the deviance of the comic book community. How the community is deviant from what you would call normal. It was supposed to be about everything about the community. It ended up being a lot about COVID-19 and how we reacted to COVID-19. About 15 pages of it was how comic collectors, comic creators, artists all changed the game during COVID-19.
I like the fact that we're known as deviants. I don't know why that makes me feel warm.
Well, yeah, when I presented the ideas to my professor, he was like, this is brilliant. You have to continue doing this. The last night that I was working at a capstone, I came across another subdivision of the paper I wanted to work on. So after school's over, well, now that it's over, I'm going to jump and just write something about that. So. And
Nora, you mentioned you're in performing arts, which is mine as well. I do a lot of community theater. I actually used to teach high school theater. I'm interested in what you do, too. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm the events manager at the O'Shaughnessy. So we have events, a lot of dance events, like dance artists, and we center around women, so women of color and women, we've had, Dessa, who's a local singer and rapper. We've had that performers like that, or commencements, so it kind of ranges.
So you're on the administrative side of the performing arts.
Yeah, I work a lot of different hours, weeknights, weekends, what have you. Work a lot of events, so now it's weird to not be having them. as sad as that sounds, but yeah.
Hoping that we get back to normal. Actually, I had a show that was supposed to open in early April, and of course, we haven't opened. We've been continuing to rehearse over Skype and Zoom and so forth, and the show will go on at some point. We just don't know when.
Right. Yep.
Well, I'm glad you're both here today. Tell me about your collecting journey, Nora. How did you get into this crazy hobby?
I don't know. I feel like that kind of would start with Kyle. So maybe you start, actually.
Yeah, so I introduced her to the comics. I was the one who said, "Here's a Deadpool book. Read Deadpool." Um, so it was Deadpool.
Kyle.
Yeah, it was Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe. I handed it to her. She saw it sitting on a bookcase. She was like, "What is that?" I'm like, "Just pick it up, read it. You enjoy it." Uh, but I guess I should start with how I got into comics, though. So one of my dad's favorite movies was The Crow. So he gave me James O'Barr's book, The Crow, when I was like 7. Uh, but I never went on to read it until I was like maybe 11 or 12. So I had it sitting there for 4 or 5 years, never touching it. But then I had a knee surgery when I was 18. Cut me down for 6 months. Ended up reading Watchmen, The Dark Knight Returns, books you shouldn't be reading for your first comic book. But those are books that got me into it. And then when we met, which was 2016, we just ended up going to comic shops almost on a weekly basis. And this entire room is filled with comic books now. So
Yeah, and it took me a little bit of time to get into it. I was like, oh, why are you going through all those boxes? That's weird. But now that's really what we do. And I kind of first started to read after Deadpool, George Perez's Wonder Woman, and that really got me like hooked. And we actually were fortunate enough to meet him last year in Chicago at C2E2. So that was like kind of the pinnacle moment for me to meet him.
yeah,
So
you kind of got all gooey inside.
yeah.
So he kissed her on the lip, and she was like, cheek. Yeah, but so
So I was going to say, judging from your story, you both had pretty, I would say, traumatic entrances into this. Judging by what you read, I mean, Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe is a great
Yeah.
book, and if you know the character, it makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, Nora, what you made out of that book, because it is a very not just a meta book that has a lot of crazy backstory, and you've got to kind of have a good knowledge of the character. What did you make of that book the first time you read it?
Yeah, I didn't really know what I was getting into. So, but then watching the first movie, I can't remember when that came out.
while we were dating. Yeah.
So, kind of having that backstory, and but I would have to revisit it. I mean, I kind of now I like dark things, like dark stories and darker comics. So maybe that's why.
Yeah, it was kind of like baptism by fire. Just kind of threw her into the comics. Like, you gotta check this out. And then she read Watchmen not far after that. Yeah.
Dark Knight Returns, those are pretty heavy books. I mean, they're some of the best of all time, but you're right about the dark part, no doubt.
Killing Joke was another one that I introduced her to too. Yeah, I like I said, just kind of baptism by fire there. Like, if you're gonna enjoy this, you have to read these books, get them out of the way first.
Well, usually the entrance stories are like, oh, when I was a kid, I picked up Richie Rich and Casper the Friendly Ghost, and I graduated into SpiderMan, and you guys like started at like the high level right off the bat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I blame the movies coming out at that time too, because Watchmen came out when I was 16, so that was fresh in my mind. Had to read the book, not to mention the Nolan trilogy, kind of the Dark Knight and Killing Joke. So
Yeah, you guys jumped in with both feet.
yeah,
Definitely.
well, it's like we're the mouse basic. People telling you how good these books are, and like, well, I gotta check it out myself, see if it's good or not. And next thing you know, you're diving into the entire comic industry, studying it too.
Okay, so clearly that led to other things. It looks like, just judging from your room background that you have, you're into the Funko Pops, which are really big with our guild members. Tell us about that part of your collection, that aspect of your collecting.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story, actually. My grandmother, when I was about 16, 17, decided to buy me a Lion King set, Timon and Pumbaa. And I had no need, no want for them. But I ended up seeing the Deadpool ones. And then after buying the Deadpool ones, just kind of gravitated towards, getting all the Batman ones possible. And then you got to get all the Wonder Woman pops, and next thing we know, we have an entire room for our Funko Pops.
I love Star Wars, so I have a lot of Star Wars Funko Pops. But we kind of have a lot of mainly Marvel and DC, as well as Star Wars, and then a pretty big Batman collection too.
So let's talk about your collection. One of the things that I always ask is, of course, to have you highlight three parts of your collection that are most important to you, most valuable, have the most meaning. What do you have for us today? Oh, and is Kyle going to do one at three, and then Nora going to do
Ooh.
three, or have you agreed upon three?
Um, I know I have at least two that I can talk of right now. One of them is actually extremely current too. So I just turned 28 last weekend, and Nora decided to stop off at a local comic shop and ended up picking up Ultimate Fallout #4, Miles Morales' first appearance. And I've been wanting that probably for the last 5 years, maybe, since I started collecting, pretty much, because I've always been a fan of Miles. So she's driving to Apple Valley, which is a suburb of Eagan. And I'm like, why are we going to the comic shop? Isn't it closed? She's like, just come with me. Next thing I know, here's a guy holding two copies of it. Pick what one you want. And I'm picking up the nicest copy he had. It's one of those things like I had to have in my collection, especially after Spider-Verse came out. If you can think of something that you want to talk about.
And then I also had to pick up myself the first appearance of Hellboy because X-Men, because I love Hellboy, and it was sitting there for a good deal. So we have that in our collection now. And then I also, I really like Sandman, Neil Gaiman's universe that he created. So the first appearance of Death, Sandman #8. We picked that up at a recent con for a good deal as well. So I'm really excited for what that Netflix show is gonna come out with. We'll see what Neil gifts us with soon, hopefully.
And then going off of that, we talked about meeting George Perez. Well, we met Kevin Conroy last year too. And I had the Masculine Phantasm comic book adaptation that I had him sign, and that thing is never leaving my possession ever. It was like the ultimate of any collector I had, because that's what I grew up on. I grew up on Batman anime series. Not to mention Kevin Conroy is probably like the nicest guy you'd ever meet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I gotta say, Nora, you have a direct pathway to my heart. Neil Gaiman is one of my favorite authors of all time. I recommend his books to everyone out there. I actually was supposed to go see him this month. Doing a big, he was doing a big like a meet and greet speech or something. My wife got it for my birthday, and now it's postponed until November, and so I'm dying.
Well, hopefully that will still happen too.
Yeah, I'm hoping that as well. I can't wait. It's just like one of those things I hated moving on my calendar, but I will. Speaking of Neil Gaiman, Nora, I know that the Gaimans live in Minnesota. Have you guys ever crossed paths with them at all?
No, we have not, but there's a local store, Dreamhaven, that has a lot of my collection is from there. Like graphic novels. He had a lot of signed editions there that have been kept for purchase. So, and then he also, his current wife, performed at where I work at the O'Shaughnessy, so I got to meet her. Sadly, he was not there, but she's an amazing artist, and just seeing her and knowing how they're kind of together is pretty cool.
One of my favorite things about Neil Gaiman is on his Instagram, he'll often go into bookstores at airports and just like sign a couple of books and leave them on the shelf. I'm like, I don't know where that is. So I could just talk about Neil Gaiman all day if you want.
I know.
Are you a Neil Gaiman fan, Kyle?
Yeah, I haven't read Sandman yet. Sandman and Saga are the two books that I'm gonna get to this summer. But like his Batman, his Batman series, Batman when he did, I loved Batman. Also, it was like his American Gods series. I love American Gods.
Mm-hmm.
But besides that, she's a Neil Gaiman fan. I'm slowly getting there, I should say. Well, I grew up on the big two.
Nora, have you read any of the Black Label new Sandman Universe books?
Yeah, is it Hellblazer? They're
Came out, yeah. That one.
yeah, that's been good,
Hmm.
definitely.
Have you tried any of the Alan Moore Swamp Things?
Yeah, I've read Alan Moore. She hasn't yet. I love Swamp Thing.
Mhm.
Uh, when the show was out on DC Universe, I just fell in love with the show. But yeah, I haven't read the whole series yet of Alan Moore's, but anything that Alan Moore writes though, I'm gonna
Mhm.
dive into it somehow. Um, like Viva Vendetta, but his Swamp Thing, I've only read the first volume.
I'm very curious about your relationship now because Kyle, you clearly have gotten Nora, you've infected her with this virus that we all have, and she's kind of a late comer. How does this influence your relationship now that you're involved in all this?
You could actually just tie it to our Instagram account, Noggin Comics. Um, the funniest thing is there's a reason why it's called Noggin. Is we both came from relationships that were kind of wishy-washy beforehand. So we couldn't say, well, I couldn't say, I love you. So what we did is said noggin, and the other one would say dude from Finding Nemo. So while she was getting into the comic books, I'm like, no, what? We should do this journey. We should see how you can get into comics by, putting on Instagram. I was thinking, like, what would be a great name? Noggin. So we came up with Noggin. Um, and I think you can actually just look at the Instagram page and see the progression because we've been doing all this collection together, and it's actually made us stronger. Um, there's a few times where she's like, "Did you spend that much money on a comic book?" And I'm like, "No." I'm like, "Did you spend that much on Omnibus?" She's like, "No." So I like the back issues. She likes the trades.
Mhm.
Um, but then it also comes down to when you buy statues. Some of the statues can be pretty pricey. Um, but yeah, I mean, what do you guys say to that? How would you think the
Uh,
collecting?
Yeah, I mean, he basically said it all, but like I said earlier, like we just always are going to shops together and cons, and a lot of some local artists and friends that we know are just like, oh, hey, and they know our account, but they know us by name, and they just think that adds to our relationship too.
Yeah, one of the coolest things just happened. A good friend of ours just published a book, published a graphic novel, and in the front page, both our names were sitting there, and it was like the first time we've ever been acknowledged in the book, and we just sent it all over Facebook and Instagram, like, look at this.
That's
Yeah.
great. Speaking as someone whose wife is not so much about the life, it's beautiful. It's just a beautiful thing, you know. A lot of us out here, we get the eyebrow,
the Rand Johnson eyebrow. Yeah.
So it sounds like both of you make an effort to go out collecting together. You're both involved in the hunt. Do you have a really good collector's story, one from each of you, or one that involves both of you?
Hmm.
Well, I can tell a story about her. Um, so
Okay.
one of the first conventions we went to was a fairly big convention in Minnesota called Fan Fusion. It no longer exists, but we had no clue how Chankin was at the time. Um, and she's seen a Star Wars book sitting in front of Howard Chankin. She started talking about Star Wars, not realizing how much she hates Star Wars. Um, but it was Star Wars #1, so you're like Howard Chankin #1. It's kind of cool. Well, Jay Lee was sitting next to him, and he just busted out laughing because we had no clue what the inside joke was. He just went off about how much he hated Star Wars.
Yeah.
I ended up sitting there for like another half an hour just talking to him because he has so much knowledge. But at the same time, like, I'm never bringing up Star Wars to you if I see you again. uh,
Yeah, it was pretty funny. Because he started writing and drawing, I think, the initial Star Wars comics,
Drew
but
it.
he drew it, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how I caught my eye. And I think the other, just meeting George Perez was hands down like pinnacle for me at this time, and I mean presently. So he's just like, it was his last, one of his last conventions before sadly he has to not make any more appearances, but it was just really cool to be able to just meet him.
Yeah, you can say it was kind of embarrassing too, because she froze up when she met him too. It was like, yeah, you're George Perez.
Yeah, the best of us. It really does.
Yeah.
That happened kind of with me with Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. We took a picture together, and I'm in the background like, I can't believe I missed you guys right now. Well,
yeah, they're great guys too.
Yeah.
Both of you seem to have pretty extensive fandoms to a lot of different areas. Is there a character that you relate to the most? Someone that you really connect with?
Yeah, I'll go here. SpiderMan, Peter Parker. I was never a huge fan of Peter Parker until recently. And she's the one that pointed it out. Like, I can be extremely sarcastic, but at the same time, I'm helping people out, not realizing what I'm doing to help people out. At the same time, I'm cracking jokes. Also, it doesn't help, but the video game came out a couple years back, and that just killed so much of my time playing that video game. Any characters that you can think of?
Well, I mean, I've been thinking a lot. I used to watch when I was younger. Well, how I started watching Star Wars was on VHS, the original trilogy, with my brother, and I just like Princess Leia was obviously someone I was like, wow, this is this woman who's just doesn't take any crap, does her own thing, is so resilient. So I'd say her, and then same with Wonder Woman. I mean, she stands for feminist, like, you know, she's the pinnacle of independence, and you know, I always strive to be, you know, my own Wonder Woman every day, so I can always remind myself. So yeah.
She tries her best to find, you know, powerful female characters in every book. Like, for example, if we were to talk about who we are as a couple, Big Barda and Mr. Miracle. Because I always found myself in some type of issue, and she's just standing there like, why are you doing this?
That's tremendous.
Also, Tom King's Mr. Miracle is probably one of the best books I've ever read. So, and that was one of the books I gave her to read. I'm like, you gotta check this out. This is absolutely amazing.
Do either of you have a collector's grail that you are always looking for? Something that you really need to add to your collection?
She's giving me that look, and she knows exactly what I'm gonna say. Batman Adventures #12, Harley Quinn's first appearance. I have seen it at almost every convention we've been to. I've even had it in my hands, but when she's seen the price of it, she's like, "You're not buying that." I'm like, "But $600 isn't that much." She's like, "Yeah, okay, you're crazy." But yeah, that's one book at every convention I'm just looking at. I'm like, well, if I put that money aside, I could buy it this time. But no, Ultimate Fallout just recently was also on that list. So this should be intriguing. I don't know what her Ultimate Grail is.
I don't really know. Like, only one I can think of is Big Barda's first appearance, which is Mr. Miracle 4, I think. But yeah, I mean, I like reading like the newer individual single issue comics, but like Kyle said earlier, I prefer to kind of just read everything in a larger format.
You've mentioned Star Wars, of course, and Batman, the Nolan series. Do you have other comic-related TV shows or movies that you like to recommend?
Watchmen on HBO. Watching that series, like, I love the movie, but that series was just mind-blowing. Especially that first episode. Had no clue what was going into it. And I ended up studying the Oklahoma Tulsa thing too, the whole Black Wall Street. Ended up studying the whole thing. Also Harley Quinn on DC Universe. Hilarious. Just watched a new episode today, and we were laughing so hard.
You have the DC streaming?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've had since day one.
Have you checked out Doom Patrol?
I absolutely love Doom Patrol.
Oh, good.
Yes.
I thought I thought Brendan Fraser was amazing as Robot Man. So,
His
Yes.
steel was like so accurate to the character. You've read those Grant
yeah,
Morrison?
yeah, Grant Morrison and Gerard Way did his recent one. So
Like those are some of my favorite books.
the only show that I would recommend not watching would be Titans. It's up and down. Like some episodes are really good, some episodes are really bad. It's just one of those things. Like if you're gonna watch it, just expect a few bad episodes.
How about you, Nora? Can you recommend anything?
Yeah, I'll go like the opposite side. I also enjoy both of those very much, but Disney Plus side, The Mandalorian and Clone Wars, especially Clone Wars recent season, has been great. Yeah, I love animation, the Star Wars animated shows, but The Mandalorian has just kind of blown it out of the water for me with the recent live action Star Wars stuff.
What are your non-comic collector related hobbies that you have?
Uh, I'm an avid sports fan. I love football, baseball, basketball. Um, Also, I play a lot of video games, but just finishing up school, haven't really had the time to play as much. She's shaking her head like, no, you've been playing quite often recently. But yeah, video games and sports.
Yeah, I'm not a gamer. I'm trying to learn, but I've always just like enjoyed reading, so seem like a loner. But I like to read a lot, watch TV, game, movies. Yeah, I don't. I used to like actually be a competitive cyclist, but kind of fell off that wagon for a while. But I still try to obviously get outside a lot. So.
Who are some of your favorite non-comic authors?
Oh, besides Neil Gaiman, I also enjoy Nnedi Okorafor. She writes a lot of African futurism books. Um, I read a lot of the Star Wars canon and legend novelization books. So like my favorite so far has been the Thrawn trilogy. So Timothy Zahn is a great author as well.
I've always been a Stephen King guy. Even as a kid, it was always Stephen King or any horror type books. Um, Also, I just got done with Super Gods by Grant Morrison. His his sociological book on the comic industry. But I'll be honest, I don't read much outside of the comic book collecting industry and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, I've read some few sports biographies, and you go into our bedroom, I got nothing but Stan Lee books too, about Stan Lee, about Kirby, um, Joe Simon. Those are the type of books.
I'm actually originally from Maine, and I grew up about 10 minutes from Stephen King's house. So I'm a big Stephen King fan as well. What's your favorite novel?
When I first got into college, my professor, his his class was all about Stephen King. And I'm a huge Green Mile fan. I love the Green Mile, but it's a small book opposed to the movie. Remember, right? Um, but the one thing that we would always argue about was The Shining, because he loved the book, hated the movie, and I'm a huge Jack Nicholson fan, so I love the movie, and it took me a long time to read the book. But honestly, my favorite Stephen King book would probably have to be The Mist. I don't know what it is about that, but it's just one of those books to me that I can read anytime, pick it up.
What did you think of the movie too?
Um, I actually love the ending. I know it made a lot of people upset. I'm like, this is a great way to end the movie, though. Um, in fact, my final paper in that class was a breakdown comparing the book and the movie. So
I always want to put on my Bane voice whenever anybody talks about the mist. It's like, you only dabble in the darkness. I was born in it. That kind of thing. Because if you don't like the ending of The Mist, the movie, you're not a dark person. I'm a big Dark Tower fan too, and let's not speak of the travesty that was the movie. Um, First thing, I love Idris Elba, but he's not
Mhm.
Paul Shane. I'm sorry, it's just not. I can't accept that. I'm hoping that the series will come into fruition and it will be like the real Dark Tower because that movie was just trash.
Oh, I'm a huge McConaughey fan too. I'm like, McConaughey's Man in Black. This is gonna be awesome. And I'm like, I'm Man in Black with bad guy. I'm like,
What is this? Why?
yeah.
It's
I remember she was like, we should watch this. I'm like, I'm never watching that again.
garbage. It's a garbage. So we've gotten to the part of our show where I ask you about your embarrassing collector story. What can you tell me?
So I'm pretty good friends with the local comic shop owner around here, and he had a Cosmic Ghost Rider statue that I just absolutely wanted. I was just looking at it. The price wasn't exactly at what I wanted to spend on it. Wasn't taking consideration of discount. I'm looking at it. I'm like, so you see that statue there? He's like, yeah. Do you want me? Can we buy it? And he was like, do you want it? I'm asking, can I buy it? It was just one of those things like a total brain fart. Just totally forgot how to ask if I can get this statue. And then, I'm not joking, 2 weeks after that, I went to get another comic from him, an expensive comic, and the same thing happened. It was like, why am I doing this right now? But yeah, that's probably the most embarrassing moment is just trying to ask for a statue and not getting the verse out. I remember the look she gave me. I looked over at her and she was like, are you having a stroke? So, and I'm like, I don't know what happened there. So,
Okay, so Nora and Kyle, we've reached the end of our interview here. If there's any last messages you'd like to send out to the guild members, go ahead.
yeah, if there was a message to send out, it would be, times are a little hard right now, but comic books provide that escapism and that getting outside the norm almost. Like we love reading Batman because Batman gives us these stories that we can enjoy. And being locked inside right now, I've read more Batman books than I have ever in my life right now. And I've been enjoying myself. But yeah, I just enjoy those comic books as much as you can right now. And once stores get back open up, just flock to the stores. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're all kind of our own superhero at this point, whether we're staying inside or people who are on the front lines. All we can really do is just be our own superhero, I guess.
Well, that's a very positive note to end on. Thank you so much, Kyle and Nora. It's been a pleasure talking to you today, and thanks for interviewing with Come Together.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for Come Together, the show that spotlights membership for the Comic Collectors Guild. If you would like to be spotlighted for our show, please send me a message in my DMs on Instagram at Comics Addicts. You can also contact our administration. Their handles will be at the end of the video. The Comics Collectors Guild is an open forum for all collectors and fandoms. Regardless of who you are and what you love, you are welcome to join for free. Just contact one of our administrators for details. It doesn't matter if you are a lover of cosplay or if you're an artist, writer, inker. If you love Doctor Who, manga, Lord of the Rings, anime, all are welcome to join. Please consider subscribing, leave us a like or a comment down below, and we'll see you next time.
A lot of adult males would say, like, go back to the kitchen back in the 360 days when we would play online, and they would say, just go make me a sandwich. They would say all these really, really, really mean things. I have a live video where these kids are just yelling at me, screaming at me, calling me all these names, and then when I would kill them, they would freak out. So it was funny at the same time, but for someone who isn't, mentally trained to take that kind of backlash, to take that kind of, treatment, then it could really discourage you from doing something you enjoy.